What's up? Welcome back to Barton and Bud. I'm Barton Simmons with Bud Elliott. After another good weekend of games, rinse and repeat, they're all good. But this weekend we saw the number one team in the AP poll go down at the hands of Notre Dame. Um, Notre Dame trying to make a case for not just being a cute little underdog playoff story every once in a while. They want to be one of the big dogs. So we'll see if we believe that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But what do you say, Bud? Another good weekend, man.
This is one of those weekends where you just kind of pinch yourself. You're like, man, this is a cool job.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, okay, all these games suck, and it's still a cool job, but it's not quite as cool. Like this was a weekend where it was just fun because all your buddies were watching all the games too. Like this was a dynamite weekend of college football, and even though it's kind of a weird feeling season, like this is the weekend to me where it felt like the most normal out of all. I mean, granted, we had the Trevor Lawrence being out with COVID hanging over all the stuff, whatever. But it just these felt like they were big time games. For a moment, I kind of forgot there weren't fans in the stands or at least not many. And that was cool. It really like the excitement was awesome. I want to kick it off here tonight with some questions that you texted me earlier. I like these. I think we can hit a lot of games talking about these. You want to go least excited or most excited fan base right now?
Okay, so I think I was thinking about this. I think to me the more interesting conversation is least excited, but that's a very negative way to start the show. We got some good news, some great performances. So I feel like we got to start off with most excited. So here's the way I'll phrase this question, though it could probably be taken a lot of different ways, and you can sort of kind of go where you want with it in terms of what the answer is and how you sort of perceive this the question or receive it. But the way I'll phrase it is, what fan base, or say, who would you be most excited to be a fan of right now? Like, what team would you be most excited to be within the fan base of right now? And I will give you a few options. You're welcome to throw any others out there that deserve to be mentioned in this sort of realm. But here are the options: Miami, Notre Dame, Florida, Texas A&M, North Carolina, Arkansas, Maryland. Obviously the common theme is sort of teams that appear to be leveling up in some way. And so sort of whatever, so take that wherever you want to go with it. Hit on a couple if you want, hit on one, hit on all of them, whatever you want to do. But where does your mind go when I ask you a question like that?
I think it's a great list, and one you also texted me, Arkansas, as those fans have got to be over the moon.
I didn't mention Arkansas. All right, yeah, Arkansas is on there if I didn't say it
in the text. In the text you had it in the podcast form. No, but since we don't put our text online, I just figured I'd mention it. Arkansas, man, has got to be high on there as well. Just like what do they have? 3 wins now? I mean, that's a hell of a lot more than I thought they'd have, than probably their fans thought they would have. They played great last night. In my head, when you texted me this, I kind of went process of elimination, right? So, Miami's having an awesome year, better year than I think most thought they would have. But also, I think in the back of their minds, they're thinking, all right, is this all De'Aaron King? And on Friday night, I mean, he was 430 in the air and 105 on the ground, and he may not be here next year. And Miami could have the best year they've had in quite a while and still not make the title game. So for me, it's not Miami. I think it's kind of the next 3 on your list, man. Notre Dame, Florida, A&M. Notre Dame, even though I'm not personally convinced that they're national championship caliber, because I still don't see the explosive plays for their offense. But that defense played exceptionally well against Clemson. They totally took away the run. Look, maybe Clemson beats them with Trevor Lawrence. I think I'd probably pick Clemson if they had Trevor back, even though I know what DJ did. But Notre Dame is having their best season in a long time. Beat number 1 at home they have to feel great. Brian Kelly's recruiting well. And like at this point, you just got to kind of embrace Brian Kelly and trust him, right? Like the guy's a really good football coach and does a whole lot with what they have there, Florida might be like the pick here though for me, because the timing just was right. Like this is the year you had to get it, and you can make the same argument. Like if Notre Dame doesn't beat Clemson without Trevor Lawrence, I mean, shit, when are they ever going to do it? But man, like Florida goes out and gets the monkey off their back with Georgia, and they do it in a way that I don't think a lot of people thought they would do. Right? Georgia largely took away Kadarius Toney, and I don't say they took away Kyle Pitts, but they certainly schemed to limit Kyle Pitts before he got hurt. And I know Georgia was banged up on defense, but Florida went out there and their other pass catchers balled out all over Georgia's defense. And Kirby Smart got out coached badly, I think, offense defense wise here by Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen put on a clinic against Dan Lanning. So that was really, I think, exciting to see for Florida fans. And they have to think, okay, now that we got this dub, our recruiting is going to take off. So maybe Notre Dame, Florida for me are the two there. And that's obvious because what just happened this weekend, but like those were big time wins. And both those teams, by the way, were underdogs in those games. We had two upsets.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy to me in the Florida deal. I agree with you. I think my answer is Florida here. Like if I'm a Florida fan right now, I'm stoked. And sometimes it seems like Florida fans are just they kind of stay a little grumpy, like they kind of stay a little dissatisfied. Like Dan Mullen, his recruiting sometimes is just it doesn't get the headlines quite that they want. There's a little bit of just restlessness. And obviously I think that'll probably diminish as soon as Florida hits the playoffs. Whenever that comes, it seems as though it to me, it seems like it's an inevitability at some point now under Dan Mullen. Not necessarily because this year's team is going to be able to beat Alabama. They might be able to, but that's not what I'm predicting here. I'm just saying, like in today's modern day college football, and I have this is like this reoccurring theme in a lot of my conversations, and from an evaluation standpoint, from a game breakdown standpoint, like talking about who's playing modern, who's not, right? Florida under Dan Mullen is a team that is built to win. He is so good at developing the quarterback position. He is such a good offensive coach. They are close enough from a talent perspective. And we just saw that against Georgia. I mean, Georgia has the more talented roster than Florida from a recruiting rankings perspective. And that certainly wasn't evident and on Saturday night. And so it's not like they're at a talent deficit. They're not at some extreme talent disadvantage. Now I know Kyle Trask is gone next year, but Dan Mullen, he did it with Nick Fitzgerald. He did it with Kyle Trask. Like Kyle Trask wasn't he was a backup to Felipe Franks. And so I think that this team, and they've recruited pretty well on defense. They've got some young guys that are coming up. Like I just think you're in a great spot. You're all of a sudden with that win, I think you could make a case that you are now in the driver's seat in the East until Georgia beats you again, because that wasn't a fluky win. And the style of play that Florida is putting on the field is, again, I think a much more apt style of play for playing for national titles, playing for playoff berths, playing for SEC titles. So I think Florida would be my answer. I agree with you on Miami. We got to see what happens next year. Miami is too easy to fall back down to earth. Notre Dame, I think, is a super exciting place right now because they did just go head to head, literally kind of told Clemson what they're going to do and did it. And it was a hell of a game, but they won. And they're going to have to do it again. And who knows what that's going to look like. But right now, I just think it's a fun program to be in, because Notre Dame is another program that has been sitting here and it's been feeling a little bit like unworthy, like feeling a little bit like not enough. Like we're Notre Dame, we're supposed to be this dominant juggernaut program, and all these other programs are passing us by, and here we are, just sort of reserved to the kids' table at Thanksgiving. And I think they've proven under Brian Kelly now over the last really 3 years, they're not at the kids' table anymore. Like they're back up at the big boy table, and they're really legitimately competing. So I think they're in an exciting place, and I love the Brian Kelly sort of rhetoric we've heard lately. Um, the one, and I agree with you on Arkansas. Like of all the results on Saturday, though, maybe it's not as indicative of long-term success, but Maryland's if I'm a Maryland fan, that's the result where I got drunkest last night. That's the result of all those teams where I went out and I said, drinks on me, let's go. It is a new era. I don't know if this is like a false flag or not, but I'm going to have fun with it while we just kick the snot out of Penn State. And I think that's a fun place to be as well. Just a little bit of promise, a little bit of excitement, a quarterback that is competent, which we didn't think we had week one after Northwestern throttled them. And so, and you got a true freshman flashing at linebacker, true freshman flashing at wide receiver. Like there's a lot of exciting things going on with Maryland. Obviously that's a steep hill to climb in the Big Ten East year in, year out. But for a single weekend, at least they might've been the most excited.
You know, taking this back to Florida real fast. Well, one thing else that I think Mullen really deserves credit for is being able to adapt his offense to something that is not normally what he does, right? Like Kyle Trask is a very different quarterback than almost all the quarterbacks that Mullen's had success with. And honestly, what is one of the criticisms of the Urban Meyer offensive coaching tree, assuming you don't put Ryan Day in that, even though I guess he was with him for, a year. It's that they're too reliant on QB run game. And that was that spread option QB run game stuff was really effective, in the odds. But now that teams are able to throw the ball better, maybe not quite as effective. Kyle Trask is not a good runner of the ball. Like he's kind of statuesque, old school throw the football, and yet Florida finds awesome ways to have him distribute the football. Now we see who Mullen recruits. Obviously, like he I think aspires to have more mobility at the quarterback position than Trask has, just given on who he signs and who he offers. However, I think this could be a good overall thing for him long-term, that he has shown the ability to develop the passing game more, even without the QB run game stuff. And even when he has a more mobile quarterback in there, like an Emory Jones or whoever you go with in the future, maybe Anthony Richardson, like maybe those guys will be able to throw the ball even better in more diverse ways. So I think that deserves a whole lot of credit. And by the way, did Jeremy Pruitt ever think about hiring Kendall Browse?
Interviewed him. Said thanks, but no thanks.
That's curious. I don't know, man. They had a 4-1 run to pass ratio, like 3 quarters into that game. Like I know Garantano got hurt, but they're like trying to salt the game away with like 35 minutes left.
All right. Put a pin in that just for a second.
All right.
Okay. Because we want to get back to that. I want to quickly so first of all, Arkansas, agree with everything you say. Like that is, talk about a program that should just be walking on the clouds right now, thinking that they're going to be looking for a win anywhere they could get it this year. They're sitting at 3-3, and the players believe, and they have Kendall Briles, like you just mentioned, calling great games, while Barry Odom may be a defensive coordinator of the year. And that's the type of guy that just failed as a head coach in the SEC. He ain't trying to jump ship for a new job anytime soon. Kendall Briles, I don't know what his aspirations are, but like that could be a staff that's in place for a few years. So Arkansas, but they're still in the SEC West, and Texas A&M, they're still looking up at Texas A&M. And the only thing that keeps me from saying Texas A&M is like, drinks on us type of mentality as well, after just absolutely waxing South Carolina, is they still have that Alabama game in their rearview mirror. Like that's still who they're looking up to. Jimbo Fisher is still there to beat Alabama. But there's no question that things are suddenly in a much more comfortable place than maybe, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, even 2 weeks ago. Like getting a win like that against a team, even like South Carolina, and they're not. South Carolina is you didn't beat anybody of note there. I mean, you beat an average SEC team, but you crushed them. And I think I don't think you really start feeling good about your team until you can do that, until you can lay 20 points and feel good about it.
The only thing that, I was going to say A&M here. The only thing that bothers me about this is that I just think South Carolina quit. And I know that's a heavy accusation, but Barton, South Carolina's defense came out hot in this game, man. They were limiting A&M. They were flying around. They were playing with great effort. A&M, I think they had 156 yards on their first 35 plays. That's not good, right?
Yeah.
South Carolina was busting its ass to try and stay in this game, and its offense didn't show up at all. And I think at a certain point, the defense just said, all right, man, we're done with this shit, right? We're not doing this anymore. And then the final 5 drives for A&M, they had 350 yards and 5 tutties. And part of that is A&M deserving credit because they bullied South Carolina all throughout the second half. But I do think South Carolina's defense kind of quit a little bit. There was some quit there. So that's the reason why I didn't really pick A&M. But they are looking better for sure. And defensive line for A&M is no joke. They're getting after it. Each kind of passing game for me, that D line wrecks another offense, gives me even more respect for Bama's offensive line and how much time they gave Mac Jones. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, I was talking to a Florida buddy today at a kid's birthday party, and he's pretty knowledgeable. He's like, man, I'm so excited. But God, are we going to give Mac Jones 7 seconds in the pocket to just bomb these dudes? And I was like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to let you enjoy your win.
Hey, that's maybe whoever sneaks a turnover in there somewhere along the way wins.
Race to 50.
Yeah. I think I got it ranked. I would go Florida as the fan base I would most want to be adopted by right now. Followed by, I would say, Notre Dame. Followed by Texas A&M. No. Give me part of that Arkansas.
Maryland. Okay. Oh, Arkansas. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in on Arkansas. Then I'll go Maryland after A&M. Then I'll go North Carolina because there's North Carolina's a little bit more of, a long-term projection. We're still in the midst of things right now. They put it on Duke, but they did lose to Florida State earlier this year. They did lose to a 1-win Virginia at the time. And so, and then I'm with you. I think Miami is sort of last because I don't trust Miami. Miami is just too, but I mean, they almost lost to NC State. So, but
I can't wait to see Jimbo knowing that he needs style points. It's all of a sudden, no huddle. A&M, let's go. 15 possessions, 18 possessions, none of this 10 position game stuff. He's going to call plays as fast as he talks, man. A&M, I was thinking about who needs style points down the stretch. You might have runner-up Notre Dame against 9-1 Texas A&M. But they're going to need style points.
So, okay. So let's say Alabama beats Florida convincingly. Is that the scenario you're thinking of that gives A&M a shot? All right. So Alabama's in, and then as the second candidate from the SEC, Texas A&M. That's the scenario.
Texas A&M versus potentially 2-loss Oklahoma, Big 12 champion against, let's assume, Clemson with Trevor and probably just as importantly, those defensive guys back. Clemson takes the ACC.
Or probably even better shot of Notre Dame beating Clemson a second time. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Because if Clemson wins again, you can make a case that Notre Dame deserves to be the fourth.
Well, that's why I think A&M needs the style points.
Right.
Like it's especially if Notre Dame and Clemson split, then A&M is going to be like, hey, you better look really, really impressive in all these remaining games. You better thump Tennessee this weekend. You better win out. And Tennessee, whatever, but LSU, Auburn are two kind of names remaining that voters will care about.
So better case for Texas A&M to make the playoffs, that Alabama beats Florida convincingly, or that Florida, a team that they beat, beats Alabama.
Oh, I think Bama Bama for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
You're not going to jump A&M, which lost by what, 4 scores or 3 scores. No, that won't happen. I don't think. Do you think so?
No. I agree with you. I was just thinking through it because I had like the idea of because Florida, if they beat Alabama, obviously they're in, and in the SEC championship game, and then the other case if A&M keeps on rolling late in the season and they got a W over the team that is in the playoffs like
Right.
that, I think that there's a spin that presents that as a strong resume. But I'm with you. I think Bama winning convincingly over Florida is probably their best bet. That way you kind of further separate Alabama from the pack and you just say, okay, amongst the mere mortals here that aren't Alabama, Florida is got, or Texas A&M has got to be in. All right. So here's the second part of this, which in a way, this is kind of more interesting. And this is actually where this question originated for me. What fan base would you be the least excited to be a part of right now? What fan base, if you were in this fan base, you would be really downtrodden? Like you would be really discouraged? Which of these? And here are your options. And if there's another one that would fit this, let me know. UCLA, USC, even though they came off a win, but I'm going to put their USC in there because they really shouldn't have. Michigan, Tennessee, Texas off a win, and Nebraska. Whew. I actually know my answer to this, but I'm curious what yours would be.
Okay, so I'm going to strike the programs that I think like could have relief soon. Okay, because I feel like implicit in this is not just, hey, our season is bad this year, but it is also, and we are going nowhere fast. Like we're stuck here for the foreseeable future. So I think you could see some kind of resolution at USC at the end of the year if things don't go well. So I'm going to strike them, and they also won. So like I think at least you're kind of happy.
Right.
This is the last year of Jim Harbaugh's contract. I don't think Michigan would fire Jim Harbaugh, but if he did want to go back to the NFL, if he just feels it's not going to work out or something like that, okay. So I'm going to strike them. And I think Texas has enough money to be able to say, pandemic, schmandemic, whatever. Like, if we want Tom Herman out, Tom Herman's going to be out. Now, they have won a couple in a row now, deserve it or not. They could still win the Big 12, which would be hilarious, by the way, if Texas were to win the Big 12 and fire Herman in the same day or in the same season. Mm-hmm. So I think it's, for me, and it's hard to pick this because I don't really know how much, I don't want to say that. UCLA has dedicated fans. They just don't have a ton of them, but like the ones they do have are really, really passionate. For me, I think it's UCLA. Like you go out, you have Chip Kelly, you're super excited. Like this is the most excited you've been about your program in years when they hired Chip. He's done nothing so far. The recruiting has not been good. They lose to a Colorado team. Like Carl Durrell, we were already making excuses for him because he got hired like in the middle of summer, basically. Like no spring ball, no National Signing Day, none of that kind of stuff at Colorado. He got hired after Mel Tucker. Remember, they were just like, all right, we'll just wait on this a little bit. And yet, all the reports I read say UCLA absolutely cannot fire Chip Kelly anytime soon. A lot of years left on that deal at big money. So they're just kind of stuck. For me, I think my number one answer is UCLA.
All right. So the reason, if you're saying they're kind of stuck with Chip Kelly, then maybe I'm thinking like at this point, Chip Kelly is just, this is a dead marriage. Like it's a matter of when, not if.
Yep.
And so that's kind of why I don't have UCLA as the team that I picked here, because I'm kind of like, this is bad, but we're going to get through this and we'll find someone else at that point. USC, kind of the same deal. Like USC it's frustrating Clay, they really didn't have any business beating Arizona State. Arizona State was the better team. So we're back. That's clear. Even though USC won, it's clear. Like take a sigh. Your heart sinks a little bit. We're just back to being just a average or above average Pac-12 team. But we have the ability to beat anybody on the right night, and we're still going to compete for Pac-12 titles with that sort of a team. So it's frustrating, but we're not in a terrible spot. Michigan this year is ugly. This year seems like the ugliest to this point, and they're attempting, but I still look. You're still coming off a bunch of 10-win seasons. You're still, you're still in there. You're still playing in big games, and you still occasionally blow out a good team. So I'm okay. I'm gonna let Michigan slide. I'm gonna let Texas slide because I still think that Texas is a team, even under Tom Herman, where I wouldn't be surprised if next year Texas is a playoff team. It wouldn't shock me. I don't expect that. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't predict that. But Texas has enough talent, and Tom Herman is not an incompetent coach. It's just they just can't get it all together. And so I don't think they're that far away. Now, granted, they should have lost to Texas Tech. They should have lost to Oklahoma State, and they probably should have lost to West Virginia, but they're still not that far away, and they did find ways to win. And so, and you know what? Like they nearly beat Oklahoma, and so it's just, things aren't awful. It's just what the expectations are. The Nebraska, this is just frustrating. This is just tough. It's just taking longer than we expected, but I wouldn't necessarily believe, if I'm a Nebraska fan, that we still don't have the right guy. I would just be very frustrated with how long it's taking. I think that the team I pick here, in terms of just my level of frustration as a fan, would be Tennessee. And that's because it's and there's nuance here. Like, I don't think like Jerry Pruitt is the worst coach. I don't think that Tennessee is hit rock bottom. Like, none of that stuff. Like, Tennessee's a quality team. Jerry Pruitt is a quality coach. But to be in year 3 and to be losing to Arkansas in year 1 of Sam Pittman, and to just see that this hadn't taken off. Like, we were just we had convinced ourselves that Tennessee, as us Tennessee fans, we had convinced ourselves that we were about to take off on this rocket ship this year. And now, not only are we not taking off on this rocket ship, like, we're not even close. We're not really close. And I think that disparity from where A, you think you should be, B, where you thought you were headed, and C, where you actually are, is a really big gap to bridge here in just a fan base's psyche. And so I feel for Tennessee fans right now to look at that product against Arkansas and be like, that's it? That's what we've got in year 3? That, like, what's the future here? Like, what are we going to look up and in 3 more years, Tennessee is going to be playing for SEC titles? It doesn't feel like it right now. After this weekend, it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like, I just don't know. It feels a little bit like a Will Muschamp type trajectory right now. And so that's, I think that kind of feeling would be tough to sit with as a fan.
There's so much in this very weird pandemic season that I just don't feel like I have a handle on, man. And like, a lot of it's like, okay, whatever. And even if you think you know about a team, like the results week to week, unless you're one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the nation, are just so wildly inconsistent compared to prior weeks. I was talking to Bill Connolly, and I think he tweeted this, so I'll go ahead and share it. He's like, yeah, man, my ATS stuff this year has either been like 60% or 40% below. Like, and his overall stuff's not bad, but it's just up and down every week. And I'm willing to give almost every team in the nation a pass for this year. Just I feel like it's kind of just a blatant money grab of a season, right? Like, we got to play these games. We have TV inventory to get our checks. That's not to say the kids don't want to play, because they obviously do. But one thing that I'm confident I got right all preseason and took a lot of heat for it was not buying in on Tennessee. I thought that, a lot of the quarterbacks they played down the stretch last year were backups and were not very good. I thought that like that win streak they had last year was not indicative of real improvement. And I started to doubt myself for the first couple games this year. And then as I dug into their play calling more, I realized, oh my God, like Tennessee thinks its run game is good. And so it just keeps running the ball over and over and over again. I'm like, guys, your run game sucks. Your passing game is much better than your run game, probably because nobody ever expects you to pass. But like if you could, the play calling, I'm not a big like criticize the play calling guy, but just every time Tennessee gets up there, all right, let's run the ball on first down. 1998 Phil Fulmer ball. I mean, they're not like a decade behind an offense. They're like 2-3 decades behind an offense. It's bad, man. And like there is zero evidence that a Jeremy Pruitt head coach team can have a good offense. It's basically Muschamp land here. Like I wanted to give him a pass for this. I wanted to say he's closer to Kirby Smart, but I'm going to defend Kirby Smart for a second here. Kirby Smart went out and got a new offensive system that he believes is much more modern. I think he understands what Bama's trying to do there and try to be like them a little bit. He went out and got 2 transfers that he thought were better fits for that system. The one guy seems like he's not ready to play, and the other dude, Jamie Newman, transferred out. At least George is trying. Tennessee, all right, let's just big old man ball him. All right, like Tennessee it's Sunday night, man, and Tennessee is still establishing the run. Like Arkansas has packed up their post game show from the field. Tennessee's still just smashing the ball into the line. I see where you're going with this, but I'll read you something from Patrick Brown of 24/7 Sports, Balls 247. Pruitt's contract was extended 2 years now, going through the end of the 2025 season and expiring January of 2026. He'll begin to receive his $400,000 raise in 2021. He actually took a pass on it for this year because of the pandemic, which means that he'll make about $4.2 million per year through the 2025 season. So Tennessee has 5 more years of Jeremy Pruitt. I mean, they can afford a buyout, but not anytime soon, probably. I just think he has time to modernize the offense if he wants. He has a guy in Harrison Bailey who could end up being good. And if I'm Tennessee, like my whole fandom is built on hope, right? And them kind of manipulating recruiting rankings in the offseason by taking a zillion guys and getting out ahead and be like, oh my God, Tennessee's making a charge number 1 when, they're not going to finish top 5. I think I can still buy into the hope, but man, like after last year, you had a lot more hope than you have now. Like this makes it look like last year was a total mirage. And this is who this is. It looks like Tennessee is a defensive coordinator for a head coach so far.
Yeah, I think that's the discouraging part is, look, I agree the 8 consecutive wins or what it was, 6 consecutive wins.
I forgot what it was, but
I think it was 6 and maybe eight, including the first 2 this year. And so,
there we go.
The 8 consecutive wins were not, I wasn't fooled on that. Like it wasn't against anyone that was significantly of note, but it was still 8 wins, and that's hard. It's hard in the SEC. It's hard anywhere. And so, okay, like we got something here. We're finding something. We're gaining confidence. There's another offseason, and granted, it's a truncated, limited offseason, but okay. I guess I just expected some improvement, some development, and things have stagnated. It doesn't mean that they've hit a plateau. It doesn't mean that there's not another elevation to come. But I think in terms of where it felt like things were headed, I think that's sort of where disappointment comes. There's a sort of resignation to a few of these other programs. With Tennessee, this is sort of hitting everyone in the face a little bit about, whoa, I thought this was going to be different, and it's not right now. I do think a close second here would be, to me, probably Michigan, just because I don't know, like this is because you're in such a purgatory right now with Jim Harbaugh is a good coach, and Michigan does have some obstacles and hurdles to being at the level of some of these playoff teams. And Harbaugh does a lot of things really well, and Michigan has played well under him, but this has been a really tricky start here. And I don't think I'd be feeling too good if I was a Michigan fan in seeing the way the defense continues to, fails to adapt, fails to adjust. I'm kind of kicking myself for not seeing that Indiana thing, because when Indiana traditionally, like the way Indiana scares these teams is they just go downfield and let some big receiver, let some talented receivers try to make a play. And they've had some success in putting a scare into some really good teams in the past by playing that way. Michigan is totally vulnerable if you're good and you're willing. And Indiana is a team right now that feels like it has a better team vibe, better team mojo, like chemistry,
sure.
and so like that sort of stuff is certainly going to matter with a season like this. And so in retrospect, I picked Michigan. I thought Michigan was that was a clear cover opportunity, but I feel like that was that was missing a lot of signs that Indiana was the right play there, and I think that's an indictment on Jim Harbaugh.
So let's go ahead and give Indiana credit for this, though, for stepping up their game, because I agree with you that in theory, like that could be a missed opportunity for evaluation. But like I played Indiana under their team total. I thought, okay, like do I trust Michigan's offense that much to get the cover, or do I really trust that so far Indiana has a good defense, but also an offense that has been kind of poor to date, right? Like they didn't do a damn thing against Penn State, and they really weren't any good against who did they play week 2?
Rutgers.
Yeah, like they really didn't look that good against Rutgers. And this game was a breakout game. Now, Indiana wasn't really efficient on offense. They threw it 50 times to get 300 yards. Like that's not great. If you got to chuck it 50 times to get 300, that's, Michigan's passing offense was actually the much more effective passing offense in this game. The thing was, Indiana's defense just kicked the crap out of Michigan's offensive line. Michigan, I think, had like 18 rushing yards in the game. And you have Joe Milton back there at quarterback. Like you should be able to run the ball, especially with his run threat there. That was problematic. I actually kind of think, and this is getting off script a little bit with the like, who would you be least excited to be a fan about? Because I'm going to come back to Michigan here, but I do want to give Indiana a shout out, and I think they might have some like 2019 Minnesota to them in that. Look, in my opinion, they were very lucky to beat Penn State. Penn State was the better team in that game by far. It was one of the absolute luckiest wins of the year, along with Texas beating Oklahoma State, and then also Oklahoma State beating Kansas State this weekend. So the luck god smiling on Okie State after they robbed him of one the prior weekend. And then Indiana really doesn't look any good against Rutgers either. I'm like, we talked about it last week. Like, who's the best team in the Big Ten aside from Ohio State? And I was like, I don't think it's Indiana. They haven't shown me that yet. Indiana came out and actually stepped up their level of play. On a lot of those throws, Michigan wasn't like blowing coverages. Indiana's guys were just going up and winning one-on-one battles. Like that was really impressive. And so if you recall with Minnesota last year, Minnesota was kind of complete BS through about the first month. They were undefeated, but they were not good. Like they were kind of skimming by against teams like Fresno State and whomever else. And then all of a sudden they were good. And it took me like a game or two to recognize it. Wait a second here. Minnesota has gone from just undefeated and lucky to undefeated and actually turning out they're playing really good ball right now. If Indiana keeps this up, they could be like a 2019 Minnesota because they got lucky in their first couple. I mean, I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State unless COVID helps them out. But like they have a chance for a really nice season here. Really nice.
It's funny you say that because I agree with you. But I remember back when in just like the spring, early previews on team by team, Big Ten, whatever. And Indiana was a team that I had circled and highlighted as, okay, I think this team is going to have a really good year. And I think that they were initially scheduled to open the season with Wisconsin, I think. And then they were going to play Wisconsin. And I was I had the belief that they had a chance at pulling that upset. And my talking point, like back in 2 decades ago, before all this pandemic stuff, was that Indiana if they beat Wisconsin, could be looking at, I think it was like 7-0 heading into October 31st Halloween game against Penn State. Because after that Wisconsin game, they play a bunch of the sort of the mid-tier Big Ten schools, along with a couple non-conference games, all of which I thought there's a good chance they'd be favored in. But it would have taken sort of, and then once you get to Penn State at 7-0, you got so much belief that who knows what happens. And so I felt really good about Indiana because I thought there was like this big runway for them to potentially like grow as a team and get better and grow in confidence. And so I was less confident in Indiana under the new schedule because they had to open the season with Penn State there.
Right.
And then you get Michigan 2 weeks later. And so I was a little worried about like this. All right, my sweetheart Cinderella pick. I'm not so excited about him anymore. And then they find a way to beat Penn State. And then the ugly game against Rutgers, they get by it, whatever. And then they just kind of start clicking against Michigan. And I'm with you. Like, I don't know what's the next iteration of this team, but it might be pretty good. It might be a team you don't want to play right now. So, I mean, it is that, but how good that is, who they're capable of beating, I guess we'll see. But that's I think it's only going to go, potentially could continue to go up.
So in thinking about this, if I put UCLA in this kind of like least excited to be a fan thing, part of it is because I think really like if you're a UCLA guy, you're thinking, oh my God, we got Chip Kelly. Like this is a real chance to level up. Like who could be a better fit in Westwood? Like we got him because he didn't want to go deal with the recruiting at Florida, but like we can really do something here on the West Coast. If you're Michigan, it's kind of like you married the perfect girl and then you're sitting there, you're signing the divorce papers. Like, damn, man, like, how did this not work out? Like who's a better fit at Michigan now? Part of the reason why I'm still not convinced Harbaugh is going to be done at Michigan is because I don't know who's the guy they go get. Is it Luke Fickell? Is it Matt Campbell? Like, there's a lot of good football coaches. A lot of guys can win at Michigan. Maybe they bite the bullet and row the boat. And I know that's not very Michigan man and all that kind of stuff. But like Harbaugh, fit wise, should have been perfect for them. And he came there and he made so much noise. Remember the satellite camps and taking his team to Rome and doing everything the right way and all that kind of stuff. There's something missing there. Yeah. I don't know what it is necessarily, other than defensive backs who can play. But like, it's just that's got to be sad for Michigan fans. They got to be bummed about that. Because like he was kind of the perfect fit, or should have been.
I'll say one thing because you mentioned UCLA there. And I'll say one thing that the thing that would I think have me most encouraged right now, if I'm at UCLA, is seeing what Boston College is doing, because Martin Jarmond, their athletic director, just made a move with Steve Addazio, and then hired Jeff Hafley as their new head coach. And Jeff Hafley, along with Sam Pittman, like those are probably the two right now. They're probably the two best hires of this 2020 cycle. And so I'm sitting here thinking, if I'm a UCLA fan, all right, I don't know when the time's going to come. I don't know when we're going to get the money. I don't know when we're going to have the cash for this. But when it happens, like this dude just made a hell of a hire. Like what else has he got up his sleeve that he can bring to Westwood? And I think that would be encouraging. But no, because like the thing with Chip Kelly is, and part of the reason like why I am sort of pretty much resolved in the fact that this is not going to work is like, okay, his whole thing has been about development. His whole thing has been about player development and strength and conditioning, evaluations, being basically the smartest guy in the room. And they've been recruiting horribly since his arrival. And so this is now year 3. And I had some UCLA optimism preseason last year, because you're going into year 2 with Chip Kelly, and he kind of got his, he purged the roster a little bit, got his guys in. Now here we are. And No, man, year 2 is bad. Okay. All right. Well, okay. Well, man, year three is when it's going to work. And then right out of the gates, you're giving up 49 to Colorado or whatever they put up on the board. To a Colorado team that was 5-7 last year and has Carl Durrell as their head coach. And Carl Durrell, frankly, Carl Durrell was a guy that I was not optimistic about either. But I have heard from people that have coached with him, been around him, like he's a great human being. He's a good coach. He's a good person. He's the other guy. Like, I don't know how well he can recruit. I don't know how much juice he has in sort of this age of football, but he just beat Chip Kelly. And I know they had to deal with some turnovers and all that kind of stuff, but whatever.
With the quarterback who was a safety last year.
Yeah.
I mean, they ran for what, almost 300 yards, I think it was. Like I had it on another screen for a minute, and man, that was a physical beatdown. Barton. Well, first of all, we need to throw this damn thing to an ad break before we forget, and then I guess I want to close this out and talk to you about. All right. By the way, that was a great topic by you. Like, we got almost 40 minutes out of that.
Yeah. That's an easy one to stretch on.
All right, guys, we're back. Really appreciate you all giving us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you want to do it. Hit us up with those questions in the 5-star reviews. That's really help us game the system there. We talk about hangover games, and Florida could have one maybe this weekend against Arkansas, although it's a huge win for Arkansas. And we think about hangover games generally in the sense of, all right, you have a big win, you go out and party, maybe the team's not focused on the upcoming challenge. Okay. I kind of wonder this year if like hangover games and hangover stretches aren't going to be worse for the teams that kind of drink their sorrows away. It's metaphorically, but I'm thinking specifically here, like Penn State. Mm-hmm. Has Penn State just quit on the season, or did they just need a game to kind of get over the fact that all their goals are done because they started out 0-2? Like they really hadn't played that bad, and they were 0-2. But it's hard to tell college kids, hey, you guys are actually you're doing fine. Like you probably should be 1-1. You played Ohio State pretty tough. You outplayed Penn State, outplayed Indiana, should have won that game. I'm just having such a hard time figuring out like what's real and what's fake this year, other than the teams that are legitimate, like still in the national title hunt. Do you think we're going to see more teams just start to really, really tank here?
Dude, I mean, this is a season of bowls.
Yeah.
Every week's a bowl. Every week is a bowl game where we got to like start doing some psychoanalysis and figure out who wants to be there and who doesn't. Because I agree 100%. And I'll be honest with you, as I do these my picks for Sportsline and my locks for the Cover 3 podcast and make my own personal bets on the weekend, I had let that slide a little bit in terms of identifying and evaluating motivation, because you're right, man. You got to get your nose swabbed, 3 times a week, and you can't go see, you can't go out to the bars after the games.
These guys just miss Halloween, dude. Like how much fun was Halloween in college? Like dude,
the
Florida State Halloween was excellent.
Hell yeah. It was I still I think it was so like one of my worst games. I don't want to say my worst game, but like the hardest one to swallow. We used to play Columbia most years on Halloween, and Columbia is usually terrible. And my sophomore year, we should have beaten them. We were a better team. They were terrible, and I had like 3 different drop picks in that game, 2 of which should have been returned for touchdowns. One of them would have been a 99-yard touchdown return. And just a brutal game, like so many like regrets and second guessing and like all that sort of stuff. And I was like, oh man. And it was Halloween. I was like, I can't go out after this. Like, this is just, I'm going to go to my room and I'm just going to be by myself. And, and this is too hard to handle. The like 2-hour bus drive home from Columbia to New Haven, by that point I was already ready to like turn up. Like, it's college. it's a Saturday night. Like you, like, like I didn't actually. I can always speak for myself. I didn't miss a Saturday night. Now the rest of the week I was good. I was, but Saturday nights was your time to get it out. And these guys can't do any of that. They can't. Like, I guess they can see their girlfriend, but like, I don't know. Trevor Lawrence may have gotten dinged for that. That, I mean, he's got COVID. I don't think it was from football. And so, like it's a tough life right now. And if you're sitting there at 0-3 right now, there's a lot of looking in the mirror you got to do and be like, how much, what's the point of this right now?
Especially when you can opt out, you can keep your meal money, you keep your scholarship, you can keep all that stuff, you can keep working out. You don't have to follow the COVID protocols. You can actually just enjoy being a college student if your season is going poorly. Like in Tallahassee, you got a lot of upperclassmen that Norvell has not been able to kind of get through to, and like they're worried about those guys going home on their bye week and bringing COVID back. So they had a Saturday practice, and you got some of these vets who are like, "Oh, we should just opt out," And as far as I know, nobody opted out yet, but we'll see what happens. Obviously, they look like they opted out of that game against Pitt when Kenny Pickett ended up playing and beating them. But like, imagine not being able to go home during the bye week at all. Like that sucks. And it just, you talk to coaches out there, this is the thing they're having to deal with down the home stretch. Like they don't want guys opting out. They have to have enough players to play. Following all these COVID protocols all the time as a college student, it's going to wear on you. I kind of wonder if Penn State bounces back. After seeing this, is Freiermuth going to stay in? Like what happens there? Maybe he will. I don't know what that kid's character is or is not, but I do think we're going to see more guys like treat this, like you said, like a month-long bowl season in November. I think we're going to see more guys opting out if their seasons are not going, like Paris Ford just did, for Pitt. And I think you're going to see some teams just out and out quitting. It's going to be really tough to handicap down the stretch unless you're talking about the really elite teams. And then good luck trying to predict next year using this year as a prior.
So, right. I think that's a great point. I think Exhibit A for what you're talking, this might have been what inspired you to ask this question, but Jahan Dotson, like the one guy on Penn State's team that you can say is balling out right now. His quote after the game, "We are not as one right now. We are not a unit right now. There are distractions that we shouldn't be focused on right now. We've got to be focused on getting in the win column, nothing else." He goes on to say, "We're not a good football team right now. We got to have everyone 100% bought in, and we got to work. Monday's a day off. We got to see every guy in the building, literally from top to bottom. We got to see every guy in the building just doing something to get better every single day. That's what's going to start. It's going to start tomorrow. We're going to see who really wants it, who wants to be here, bought in. If you don't, there's no time for that. We're 0-3. It's time to see the turn. There's a lot of reading between the lines in those quotes. There's a lot of like, all right, I hear you. I hear what you're saying, Jahan, like loud and clear. Like there's some guys that are not feeling this season, and they probably would be feeling a little better about things if they're 2-0 instead of 0-2 heading into that Maryland game.
I mean, Jahan, I kind of feel like we did just see it, unless
right.
Maybe Jahan is hoping, hey, like, all right, this was the hangover game. Get out of your system. We're 0-3. Let's win the Final Four and win our matchup there at the end of the season. Look, maybe South Carolina fits that. South Carolina did that off a bye.
Right.
Like maybe the defense is like, okay, we're going to come out. We're going to play hard. Wait, offense. Oh, my God, you still suck that bad? All right, guys, like, it's just you play defense. You know how hard it's like when you're pitching a no-hitter and your team can't score any runs.
There's nothing more demoralizing, especially if you're on punt team, because then you go down, you get off the field, you play defense. They maybe get like 7 plays or something on defense, get off the field, get on the bench, 2 plays. And then they're like, punt team up, and you got to get up because it's 3rd down. And if they don't get a first down, you got to go out there again. So you get like 2 plays of rest, and it's just 3 and out after 3 and out. There's nothing more demoralizing than that. And that's what some point, like, you're just going to, like, what more can you do here?
As people who are handicapping these games, we need to be on alert of like, okay, this team might just seriously quit on the year, like not officially quit, but like we need to mark them as basically just I'm blacklisting them from betting on them.
Yeah.
Going forward. I can't put Penn
I'm
State
big
there
into this
yet,
theory.
but like,
Well, we missed our opportunity at Penn State. Now because there was a perfect that Maryland
you didn't bet
game,
him, did you?
No.
Yeah,
Oh, hell no. That was a big number. I wasn't going to do that, but I certainly didn't see that. Even the idea that Maryland might sneak up on them and upset them, I think I could have like found that to be believable. Like, hey, yeah, maybe I'll just like sprinkle a little on the money line in case something crazy happens. Sure. Worth a shot. But they just flat out whipped them. Like they just like that to beat them like that was not within the realm of possibility from what I envisioned in that game. So yeah, that was like a missed opportunity from a gambling perspective of just being like, all right, Maryland goes from awful to like looking all of a sudden really good one week. Like they are feeling good about themselves, like hungry for more in this rivalry game where they've been the little brother. Now Penn State, a team that had playoff aspirations, is 0-2 coming off the biggest game of the year. And this is a rivalry that they had sort of been dominating. All right, we can just show up and get this done. And no, Maryland had other plans. So like that, I think that was a real missed opportunity at finding some value. Not necessarily picking the win, but certainly like against the spread, that number was right for the picking.
So sometimes I'll make my number and I'll be like, okay, I'll bet it if it's this, and I'll bet the other side if it's that. And in fact, I do that for all games. But like the difference between the two numbers is sometimes kind of small if I feel like I have a pretty good handle on the teams and it's around a key number. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, wait a second here. Maryland has like 2 priors this year. One of them looks absolutely terrible. The other one, they blow out Minnesota. Don't really know what's going to happen there. Penn State, I have no idea they're going to react. I pulled up my week 10, what I want to bet it at stuff. I was going to need 21 to take Penn State, and that thing was 27, and I was going to need 31 to take Maryland. So, like, I don't usually have a 10-point gap between those two, but I feel like just if you're handicapping at home, if you have 2 teams you have great uncertainty about, like my number for this thing was 27.5. So I made it kind of on both sides. Like, all right, like, I really don't want to take Penn State. If they drop me something weird here, I'll take it 21. If they give me 31 on Maryland, I'll take it. But other than that, it's probably a stay away.
God, what a weird team Maryland is, man.
God.
43-3. Northwestern put up 43 on those guys. And they couldn't do anything against Northwestern on offense. And then like the next 2 weeks, Talia's been one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
You know, maybe he is tied to his brother playing. Like Tua gets the start for the Dolphins. Talia goes off. Okay, so this is just totally off the wall. And Maryland looked so bad in that first game. Do you remember the Navy BYU game to start the year? Now, BYU turns out to be really awesome, but like we found out that Navy had not actually had contact in practice, which might have contributed them to losing 58-3 or whatever that opening game was. Like Maryland looked like that.
Well, you know, I
did Maryland not have contact in practice?
I don't know.
Because they did have the unfortunate, the like I would imagine Maryland now is pretty high on player safety after the unfortunate accident they had 2 years ago with Durkin.
Well, look, I'll say this: early in the season, when like the SEC was playing and the Big 12 and ACC, they were all playing, right? And I was going to try to hit up a bunch of schools in the Big Ten and kind of do like weekly or biweekly reports on just sort of like, all right, who's flashing in practice? Like in my mind, I'm like, oh, these guys are practicing. You know, there's some standouts. Like let's try to highlight a few of the guys that are emerging. And as it turned out, like teams just weren't really practicing. Like because there were a couple that were, like Ohio State was, I think Michigan was, Penn State was, some of the, like, but a lot of these schools weren't really getting after it that much because they just weren't able to. And Maryland was one of those, right? I hit up someone in Maryland. I was like, what's like, talk to me. Like, who's looking good? And the response was like, dude, we're not even like on the field. We're not like we're barely in the building. Like we just had, because I think they may have even had like one of those sort of, outbreaks on the team in October or late September or whatever it would have been. So you might be onto something there. Like they might have just been very late to the game in terms of getting the guys ready. I don't get the sense. I know that, in the off season, in the summer, when other staffs were in the building, at least they just had to sort of stick to protocol. Like Maryland wasn't in the building. So you absolutely might be onto something in terms of just maybe their access to the players has been a little more limited than some of the other teams. There's a lot of that behind the scenes that we don't really know. Like that's not heavily reported stuff.
And week to week still. Like it's not just preseason stuff, man. Like there's like, hey, this guy was actually out this week for contact tracing and we cleared him on Friday, so he's a go for the game, but like he didn't practice all week. I mean, Miami had a bunch of guys out against NC State. Now, I mean, a lot of them weren't necessarily impact dudes, but like there's probably a reason they gave up 41.
Right. Right.
This is really hard to track. I mean, like in my power ratings, I have, different columns, like a coaching adjustment column or a COVID adjustment column, and then an injuries adjustment column. Then I have notes, and it'll be like, hey, remove this after such and such date, right? Because like you put it in, and then like a -1 or a -2 or whatever I feel it should be. Although it's not actually working this year, I still have a negative ROI in my preseason bets. 22% ROI live wagering, -2% ROI per game bets. Like, if not for content, I would just do total in-game stuff at this point. Like, so I can watch a drive or two and make sure like the team has the players who are supposed to be on the field, and just
yeah.
Did you pull the trigger on Florida, by the way?
Yeah, money line. I played
Nice.
money line. That was actually I played Florida and Notre Dame on the money line both this weekend. So I'm just treading water all year long. Like I've actually had the last 3 years have been pretty like lights out for me in terms of my picks. I'm just treading water this year. I'm literally, I think, like down $20 on the season or something, like basically just dead even. And a lot of that is just like that, like this weekend, like the playing Florida money line, Notre Dame money line. Like I otherwise lost more than I won, but those were enough to sort of keep me in the black for the day.
I hit Florida, Georgia under 71.5 live, and then the pick six happened. I was like, okay, well, now I'm in a live bet Florida by a bigger margin, and so I took Florida -4.5 plus 176, which cashed, and then I also hit under 82.5 because I was like, well, I mean, like Georgia's offense looks absolutely terrible. By the way, I was ripping through some of these advanced box scores that Stats of War on Twitter has. Georgia had a 23% success rate in that game. Like that's not all Georgia ineptitude. I mean, there's a good part of that, but credit to Florida's defense. Like they, after that first play, I think Georgia had like 200 yards in their next 57 plays, like to end the game. After that 75-yarder to open the deal, that was man.
Georgia is such a fascinating like case study, and it's just such a maddening puzzle to try to put together that I feel like sometimes Florida has just been a little bit of an afterthought in terms of like getting the credit it deserves for that. I know, like on the Cover 3 podcast, like on our reaction pod the other night, I feel like we talked the whole time about Georgia, but you're right. Like, and I think we've done a good job today, at least, of like giving Florida its due. But Florida did that. Like that wasn't a failure of Georgia. That was a Florida going in there and just being a lot better. And so they got something cooking.
They do. Look at that, man. Right at an hour. I like it. When Tani puts in the ad read, it'll be like probably an hour and 5, which is awesome. Hope you all have a great Monday morning, or if you're on the West Coast, hope you all hit this before you go to bed on Sunday evening. Bart, you got anything else?
I think I'm good. We'll reconvene midweek. We'll see. We'll start to pick up the pace a little bit. Get this playoff talk going soon. We got it. We're learning 1 week at a time.
All right.